Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Let's Program with Scientir. Welcome for the first time. If for some reason you're starting with a part 3, you may do so if you want. So last time, I began working on this due date task module, and there's some specific things that I realized it needed to do. So something that I realized it needs to have is I'm just going to come down here and add a public task owner, which is by default null, because by default we don't have an owner. Now, something that I decided I wanted to do, as I was thinking about this a little bit, is I want to add a add module function. So this is going to take a task module dot module type. Let's see. And I'll probably make a couple of these, overload this a little bit. But what this is going to need to do is it's going to need to make a task module tm equals task module dot generate id tm dot owner equals this, and then task modules, this one, add tm. Okay, and then this adds a task module to this task. The type of task module to add. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and actually make a second one, which actually just takes a task module and rather than generate it, it is going to go module.owner equals this, because it should, and then add it to our list of task modules, like so. A task module to this task, the module to add. Okay, so just putting it here allows us to make sure I'm getting some sync up technology, as it were. So let's go back to this. So right here, part of the reason why I needed to do that is because this needs to, it's the thing that it needs to do is go owner, it needs to do stuff with the owner. So first I want to go program dot send notification, and this is going to be task do plus owner, and now I'm going to need to add, I'm just going to put toString for now. I'm eventually going to want that to be the name, but I don't have that field just this very second, so let's go ahead and actually add that. Let's just come down. So I want to leave function stuff down there. So let's come up here and let's go public string name equals unnamed task by default, because it doesn't have a name yet. The name of this task. Okay. So if I come over here, let's go ahead and replace this with .name. And then due time plus due date dot toString. Okay, so that's going to go ahead and send out the notification that this is due. Now, I might want to add some additional functionality to this. And lovely water break there. What that functionality is that I might potentially want to add is like the ability to click on it and bring up the specific task. I'm not going to do that right away, but I might add send notification. I might add some functionality too, and that will error this out so I can go find it again to be able to add that specific functionality to bring up the information about the due date. So, like I was mentioning last time, there's actually, can I add, sorry, I was just thinking, Windows will bring up notifications and have like snooze and etc. So I'm wondering if I can actually go over here and show balloon tip. doesn't have a whole lot of fancy stuff on it, but maybe if I let's see. Can I so I can just do that. So when the balloon tip is clicked. Okay. So I can go ahead and add something for this. Like, whoa. So that was what happens if you hit insert, control insert, it's actually paste as well. Most people probably don't know that because they don't do it, but that just told you that the last thing I had on my clipboard was in fact this pile right here. And then it spewed it everywhere. So what I want to do right here is just resurrect window. And I'm curious to see if that actually works. Yeah, I'm very curious to see if that actually works. So I don't actually know. Do not actually know. Something else that I'm going to need to add, actually, is I'm going to need to add some sort of way for this to keep track of time. You might remember that this module needs to check the due date, and the only way for it to do that is, in fact, with, as you might guess, something that's keeping track of when it is. So, probably the way that I know how to do that best is with a timer. It must be used in a window. Okay, so the question that I have is there like a date? Okay, so there's nothing there. Timer, time zone, time span. A time span is what you get when you subtract two date times, by the way. I'll actually probably want to use that for offsets or recurring events. So this doesn't seem to have an explicit way of sort of doing that. What I might do is probably stick that on main window. And I'm probably going to add a timer to this. Unfortunately, well, is there like... No, there's not a clock. Because what I want is I want something that can basically sync with the clock. So, because like right here's a date time picker, for example, which is great, but not what I want to use for a breadth of time, if that makes sense. As a water break. So let's think about how I want to approach this a little bit. I don't necessarily need to do this right away, but it's in my brain, so I kind of want to approach it. Let's see. So let's just hit this right here, which is everything. Data sets and data grid views and all sorts of things that I'm not going to be using. Hey, horizontal scroll bar. Error provider. Font dialog. I like group boxes. They're very nice. Mass text boxes are something I don't tend to use often. Oh, there's notify icons right here. Again, I'm not really using it from there. So there's the timer right here. But I was just kind of curious. By the way, this web browser is I was talking about this in earlier, or I think the first episode. This is not particularly useful because it uses Internet Explorer, which is not really what you want. Provides the ability to connect to, query, and manipulate running or stopped Windows services. I wonder if there's a Windows service that I can hook into. That's an interesting question. So let's just drag this over here and see what this can do. Okay, so you give it a service name. Property pages, no. This properties I want categorized, like sorts it by the sort of thing that it is. Does it have its event list? Does it not have events? Oh, interesting. It doesn't have events. Well, what does the service controller do? Sorry, I haven't ever seen one of these before because I've not had a need to look. Status. It's a status this instance. Refresh. Pause. Machine name. So it just gives you a bunch of information about the service, or allows you to wait for a specific status. I don't think that's going to do what I want. It's interesting, but I don't think that's going to do what I want. Okay, so what I think probably my best bet is just to use a timer. It feels somehow sort of inefficient. And what I'd really want to do is kind of register myself somehow. What is it? Interesting. Register myself with some sort of scheduling service. But I don't actually know how to do that. So, well, let's go ahead and look at service controller, that guy. Did I search for the wrong thing? Service controller. Okay, apparently I went for the wrong thing. Represents the Windows service and allows you to connect to a running or stop service manipulator to get information about it. Yep, that's what I discovered. Can raise events because can raise an event. Can it? This list of event handlers attached to this component. Interesting. Returns an object that represents a service provided component or by its container. I don't know if it's useful yet. So I'm just going to close that. Let's see. Connect to and control the behavior of existing services. When you create a service control class, you set its property so it interacts with a specific Windows service. You can then use the class to start, stop, and otherwise manipulate the service. You'll most likely use a service controller component in an administrative capacity. For example, you could create a Windows or web application that sends custom commands to a service through the service controller instance. This would be useful because the service controller manager, Microsoft Management Console Snap-in, does not support custom commands. After you create an instance of service controller, you must set two properties on it to identify the service with which it interacts: the computer name and the name of the service you want to control. By default, the machine name is set to the local computer, so you do not need to change it unless you... Okay, yeah, that's great. Generally, the service author writes code that customizes the action associated with a specific command. For example, a service can contain code to respond to an on pause command. In that case, the custom processing for the pause task runs before the system pauses the service. Okay. Interesting. So what I'm wanting to know is if I can use this to... Yeah, this is the output that it has. Okay. I might research more into setting up the timer a bit later, so I'm not spending a bunch of time with this episode researching it. I will want to at some point set up a way of checking the due date, but I'll worry about that later, I guess. Let's see. So I actually want to add a public bool recurring equals false by default. Public time span recurrence rate equals null. Nope. Structs are not reference types. Okay. So something that I'm going to actually do now, because I have two booleans right here, and my desire for optimization is strong. I'm going to go ahead and add this actually. Write recurrence rate. Does this have a 2 binary? That's not what I'm looking for. What I actually want is in fractional milliseconds. I don't care about that. I care about minutes, I think. How do I want to handle this? Do I want to use a time span, or do I want to use like a long storing minutes? This is convenient because it like automatically converts stuff, and yeah, I think a time span makes sense. So I'm just going to save minutes. And then I'm going to go up here and go recurrence rate equals new time span ticks. Everything's in ints though. Yeah, that's obviously rather small. Okay, so I'm going to need to cast this to an int, because that's what makes sense. Hours, minutes, seconds. Okay, so I'm probably going to be using this specific thing a lot. 0 hours input dot read in 32 minutes, 0 seconds. I'm not too concerned because, to put it bluntly, int max is like 2 billion, and that means like let's just say 2 billion minutes is just a bit of a long time. Actually, can I just calculate out what that is through like this? Yeah, I know. Can you? Okay, well, whatever. I'm not gonna worry about it. Okay, so recurrence rate's going to be read that way. I'm going to kind of save it total minutes. I'm not going to worry about fractional minutes because that would be in seconds, right? And I'm not going to have those, so I just cast it to an int. And now what I want to do is, let's see, byte flags equal input dot read byte, and then completed equals flags and 1 does not equal 0, and recurring equals flags and 2 does not equal 0. Actually, just for thoroughness sake, let's just putting OX in front says that this is hexadecimal. So by default, it's a decimal number, but this is a hexadecimal number, hexadecimal integer. So this is 1 and this is 2, but something like OX10, this is not 10, this is the value 16. That's going to be equivalent to 16. This would be true. Hexadecimal is very useful when you're working with binary because it matches up really well. I think I talk about it in the overview. Don't remember where exactly, but if you wanted more information on that, you can check other resources. I'm not going to go into it here because it would be a lot of talking. Okay. So the other thing that I need to do is I need to make a byte flags 0, and then if completed flags or equals ox1 if recurring flags or equal ox2. Now technically you don't need to do this process. I'm just doing it because I like, this is more space optimal. It's going to take a byte to save the bool anyway, but if I combine them together like this, it only takes 1 byte for the 2 bools instead of 2 bytes. So it saves a very, very, very tiny amount of space in the grand scheme of things. Remembering that a kilobyte is 1024 bytes and a megabyte is 1024 kilobytes. It's really a very fractional, tiny, tiny amount. Sometimes you care. If you're doing stuff over a network, for example, you really care. It's never bad to optimize space, like what I'm doing here, but this is just being very thorough about it. This is OR equal, this is bitwise OR. So what it basically says is it turns the bit associated with whatever value this is on, or the bits rather. So this is 1, which looks like, so if this is a byte is 8 bits. And I'm separating it out like that because that's hexadecimal. So hexadecimal, each hexadecimal character is worth 4 bits. So that's why it's really convenient. So this is just saying, oh, this bit is on, this bit is on. This is saying if this bit is on. In other words, what this is bitwise and, so it's going to kind of compare things to say, if we share a bit in common, then this will be on. So for example, if both of these are true, then, which doesn't make any sense, it's probably going to be kind of 0, 1, or 2, because you completed and recurring doesn't make any sense. But if you have this, both were true, then it would have the value of 3, because it would be 1 plus 2. And now I've gone on about that long enough. Okay, so if it's completed, we want to say that it's completed and remove it. Okay. Okay, so how do I want to handle this? Because what I could potentially do here is I can go, if recurring, instead of doing that, it does other behavior that's related to recurring, and this is else. So maybe when you mark it completed, I need to say, like, do I want to make this have a Boolean return? I'm going to actually mark this bool, so that way I can get information from here. Most stuff probably won't care. This can return true, and this can return false. The reason why I'm doing this is saying, hey, if I'm marked as being completed, but I've decided that I'm not being completed for whatever reason, mostly this one. This is the main thing that would actually use it. So maybe I don't want to change this to bool for all of them now that I think about it, and I'm just going to have special behavior in this guy. Mark owner not completed. Where's the... I'm just going to turn this to void again. I'm going to need to mark the owner not completed because it's not completed. But that's probably going to be a slightly complicated process, potentially, just because I'll need to make sure that I update the controls that this is going to be connected to. So I'm going to want to figure out how I hook that stuff in. I do not need this open, so that way it's a little bit cleaner. But what I'm going to do right here is I'm going to take due date plus recurrence rate. There we go. That's all I need to do. Do that and then mark owner not completed because it's not completed. So that's how that's going to be set up. Now, one of the things that we'll note is I have done a lot for this particular due date module, which is great because I think it's going to be very helpful. But at this point, what I'm going to want to do, or next wants to accomplish, is it's actually like setting up some of the controls for doing stuff with tasks. So that's going to be kind of my next priority, I suppose you could say. So let's think a little bit about how I want to approach this. So tasks are going to belong to categories. And so categories are going to need to be able to have information about them. So how do I want to approach this? So thinking about it, what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to actually have not this gigantic list of all of the things. Okay, I want containers, tab control. Been doing this long enough that I can remember these things. Tabs. Okay, so I'm going to want a number of different tabs here. Let's go ahead and put this guy at where is my location? There it is, 0,25. These things are 25 tall, or 24 tall. They're 24 tall. So this is just underneath it, which is where I want it. Let's drag the size out a bit. We're going to make it the full window size, but I'm going to do that down here. Tabs.size equals, actually, no, not like that. Tabs.width equals client size.width. Tabs.height equals client size.height minus tabs.top. This is a trick that I use right here. Just instead of writing in a hard-coded number, I just know, hey, the height's going to need to be the height of the thing minus the additional top. So let's add a resize end, because I don't think it needs to happen until it finishes. Let's go ahead and just take this right here and paste it into here. That makes sense to me. And then what I can do is the tab pages that I have will also have resize stuff to resize the things within them. But doing it on the end just is a little bit more efficient potentially if there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a potential for a lot of controls to be happening inside of this. So what I want here is to figure out what my tab pages are going to be. So let's think about some of the functionality that I want to have. I want to do that A to Z because I prefer A to Z. So first of all, this tab page, let's name this one main tab. And let's just call this the collection view. And the reason why I'm going to do that is because this is where you kind of browse through, or not collection view, excuse me, category view. This is where you're going to browse through your categories. And then this one I want to call due date view, or due date tab. So this one I want to list I'm going to call it scheduled view. And the reason for that is this is going to display stuff that's been scheduled. So I know I'm going to want to add one for search. And I'm just naming all of these tab paid search tab. I'm just naming all of these because that I know that A, it lets me see what's going on over here, and B, I know that I'm going to want to work with them that way. So I think that's probably the tabs I'm going to work with for now. Category view is the main one. Scheduled view is going to show upcoming stuff. So that's going to look through what's been scheduled and kind of show you stuff there. And search is going to let you search for tasks. So category view is going to need some very important stuff. Now, the way that I'm actually going to approach this, because there's different ways that I could do this. I could just put stuff in here. But the way that I want to, I guess, let me think. I'll think about how I want to do that, actually, and we can approach doing this stuff next time. Until then, let me actually let me add a couple of forms, because I'm going to want to do stuff in between episodes, and I'm just thinking of a couple of forms that I'm going to want to have. So one of these is going to be suggested task form, and I'm just going to add form on at the end of this, just to be extremely clear that it's a form. And I'm going to want to add a settings form. And I think there's one more that I'm wanting to add, which is the task edit form. Okay, so I'm going to add these forms because I know I'm going to want them, and so I can do stuff, so I can set up the icon in between. So until next time, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.